So you're thinking about a career as a firefighter. Well, I can tell you all about it. I've been doing it for 10 years. To start, you need to know that departments vary based on size. The way things are done in Texas may be different, and I guarantee you that they are different as the way they are done in New Jersey, Philadelphia, Washington State, Canada, Mexico. It's all done just a little bit differently no matter where you're at. And if you're looking to be paid for this, paid departments start at around a town population of 4,000. There are exceptions to that, but from what I've understood, once your town has that many people, they start looking at staffing full-time positions for their fire department instead of being a volunteer-only department. So the first thing you're probably going to want to know, and the big question is, what does this job pay? The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics say that the national average is $50,000. The 5 states that pay firefighters the highest salary are New Jersey at $84,000 a year, California at $80,000 a year, Washington State $76,000, New York $72,000, and Colorado at $68,000 a year. The 5 states that pay firefighters the lowest are, no surprise, what we consider usually the poor states: West Virginia $36,000, Kentucky $34,000, Louisiana at $33,000, Mississippi at $32,000, and Puerto Rico at $27,000 a year. There are additional benefits to this job. You get paid individual health care, so that's free for you. They offer a family plan, but anyone you add on extra to that, you have to pay for that out of your paycheck. You get that up until you reach age 65. So if you say that you retire at age 40, they're going to give you a voucher to purchase health insurance with whoever you want. Use that voucher like a coupon towards the health insurance. Then when you get on Medicare, you just have Medicare. They usually offer a free dental plan, a $30,000 death benefit. I get about 1 month vacation each year, and that starts on your first year of being hired. Some departments are going to probably tell you that you have to be out of your probationary period. You have to work a full year before you accrue your vacation time. Also, we get 12 hours of sick time per month, and you can just let that add up and then have a nice pool of sick time to use whenever you want. A lot of people use the strategy of saving up that sick time for a very, very, very long time, and then if they want to, they can just take off 3 months of work. There's also an opportunity to work overtime. Now, that might not sound like a benefit, but this is also a job where you're working an unusual shift. So working overtime at this job doesn't really feel that bad. Plus, it's just extra money. A lot of the guys that I work with make an additional $10,000 to $20,000, sometimes $30,000 for the whole year just with the amount of overtime that they've worked. At my department, we offer something called incentive pay. So anything that I do outside of my regular schedule, any trainings I go to, any working to fill in a slot where somebody's taking a sick day or vacation day, anything that I work, they pay me not only overtime, but it's overtime plus an additional $2 or $3 an hour. I forget the amount, but it really makes it worth it, and it's incentivizing people to help cover vacancies on shifts. If you're going out of town for a training, they give you a $45 a day food allowance. They also give us a $450 a year clothing allowance that we can purchase our uniforms with, boots, additional items for our gear such as flashlights, hats, gloves, work gloves, impact-rated gloves, things like that. So there are those additional benefits. The biggest benefit to this, if your area is offering it, is hazardous duty state retirement. Speaking of the work schedule, there are 3 types here. There's what's called the 24/48, the 48/96, and then the 48/72 with Kelly Day. Looking at this sample of the 24/48, it's cut up into A, B, and C shifts. So you work 3 shifts at your department. They're going to put you on one of those shifts. Say, for example, you're working on A shift. Well, all the days in the month here for June that are in red, those are the days you go to work, and you're there for 24 straight hours. So it feels like the first 12 hours are Monday and the last 12 hours are Friday. So imagine only going into work. For this, it ended up being 9 days for the whole month. Now we're going to look at a sample of the 48/96, and this is what I work, and this is what I prefer. Looking at the month of June here, same situation. It's an A shift, a B shift, and a C shift. A shift's going to be in red, so you're going to work the days listed in red, and that isn't being the same amount, but only 10 days out of the month. When you're at work, you're working 48 straight, all the way through 48 solid hours, and then you're off 4 days in a row. So look at that 3rd week in June. You're working Sunday and Monday, then you're off the middle of the week. You go back into work on the weekend there on the Saturday, Sunday, then you're off again for almost the whole week. That's 4 days. Then you go back. And you'll notice that it's offset and it rotates. So you will get some months where you only work one day of the weekend for the entire month. And then you'll have some where you're working 2 Saturdays in a month. You'll have some where it's 2 Sundays, 2 weeks in a row, but only 1 Saturday. So the rotation there really gives you opportunity to be off on the weekend, sometimes 3 weekends in a row. But also know that if your shift lands on a holiday like Christmas or Thanksgiving, you're just out of luck unless you're a senior man and you're saying, hey, I'm going to take vacation, I'm going to be off that day. If your day lands on Christmas, you're probably working on Christmas. If it doesn't, good for you. Here's an example of the 4872, and what you will find with this, usually if you're working federal, so a federal firefighter will work on federal property like an army base, or a major highway has a tunnel that goes under a mountain. They're going to want a fire department on that tunnel. So federal properties sometimes will have these Kelly days. Sometimes municipal fire departments like the city government will also offer that. And what a Kelly day is you have a set day of the week that's just going to be your day off regardless of how your schedule falls. So let's look at this 4872 and pretend that we're off on Wednesdays. So you would work Sunday, Monday, then you're off 3 days. You happen to already be off on your Kelly Day Wednesday. You're off on Thursday, go back into work 2 days, you're off 3. And then when it's time to go back to work, look at that. Your Wednesday on duty, that's actually your Kelly Day, so you're technically off. So that ends up being 4 days off in a row. Then you would go back for a 24-hour shift, and then you're off your 3 days. So that one's a little bit more confusing for people. It's hard to find a good picture image of those schedule postings. Once you work a work schedule like this, it's really hard to go back to Monday through Friday 9 to 5. It makes the 40-hour a week Monday through Friday schedule feel and seem miserable, because when you're working that, you're only off on the weekend. You're only off, and if not, it's something offset, like maybe you're off Monday, Tuesday, or maybe you're off Sunday, Monday. And those 2 days off, knowing you're going to go to work 5 days in a row, I can't go back to that. I wouldn't want to go do that at all. What do you really do as a firefighter? Well, this is just a sample for my department. And our city has a population of about 8,000. So we ended up with 1,164 total calls for the whole year. And I know of other cities that have a roughly the same population. They also have the same call volume. So if you want to know how busy a city fire department is, it's roughly 1,000 calls per 8,000 people, and that's the math you can do to figure it out. Out of those 1,000 calls, we had 24 structure fires, 154 motor vehicle collisions, 17 vehicle fires, 14 brush fires, and 374 EMS calls. Everything else is something like a fire alarm, severe weather, public assistance, false alarm, malfunctioning alarm, smell of odor, smoke in the area. People will smell some propane next to their house and they'll call 911 and we'll go in there. And so the bulk of these calls are not actually going in and actively fighting a fire. A daily response to a real fire for a large department, like say New York City, Chicago, LA, Miami, that's a reality for them, that every single day they know that they're going to actually fight a fire. The reason that your call volume might be different is because more and more fire departments are doing EMS calls and also merging with ambulance services. And there are pros and cons to that. One of the good things is that we usually offer more pay for an EMT or paramedic. Really, it's a safer job overall to be in an ambulance rather than going into a burning building. One of the cons to that is that if you don't live close to a really nice quality hospital, if you're working in a department where the best hospital in your area is 50, 60, 70 miles away, those transfers can really wear you out. You'll find that a small town hospital will often send patients to a level 1 trauma center or the top quality medical centers, and they're doing this all day, every day till the end of time. They're just transferring patients out. It's this liability thing where the hospital doesn't want to be liable for the patient that they have. They can only offer so much care, so they get them out the door, and of course they send them a bill. They go somewhere else, and then that patient gets the bill. That's a whole nother topic for another day. But it's the transfers that people hate about EMS. And I have a coworker that says if we ever get an ambulance, that he's not going to work there. Now, I just told you that we do EMS calls, and I also just told you that we don't have an ambulance. So the way that works in the fire service, if you don't have an ambulance and you're doing EMS calls, you are often responding to a very bad 911 call where it's a cardiac issue. A person is dying, somebody's having a diabetic emergency, it's a stroke. It could be a lot of different very serious medical issues, and the fire department will respond to that with the EMS service. Sometimes the EMS services are so backed up, they're so slammed that they have a longer response time than a fire department would, and that's what we ended up with in my city. We'll be on scene with a patient sometimes a good 2 minutes before the ambulance, and then sometimes a good 15 minutes. And that's scary to think about, that it could take an ambulance 15 minutes to get to you if you're needing an ambulance right then and there. But that's the reality of some of the areas in the nation right now. And that's what you're being paid to do, is to be on call. If you have the opportunity to ride on an ambulance for a department, it's often something that you'll be rotated into. Do it for a while and then rotate back to being on a fire engine or a fire truck. Some people I know, once they get their paramedic, they start making pretty decent money, so that's what they want to continue to do. Can you sleep at work? Absolutely. So when I'm telling you that you are at the station for 24 solid hours, that doesn't mean that you're up and doing things for 24 hours. Depending on how busy your department is, they may tell you to just go ahead and go to sleep when you get to work, because you know that you're going to be busy that night. Sleeping at work is a necessary thing to do because it's a physically demanding job when you're going to be fighting a fire. It's not a physically demanding job when you're going to some of these smaller of importance runs, like a false alarm or the smell of odor in the area. At my department, we usually get in bed by 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. It just depends on what we're feeling. After City Hall closes at 4 o'clock, that's a lot of our downtime. We may go to the gym and lift weights. We're going to cook dinner, we're going to sit around the table and play cards, watch some TV. They're not paying us there to produce something. We are not in a factory making things. What we are paid to do is to be able to respond at a moment's notice with a very high skill set. And you are expected to respond to any problem. It doesn't matter what it is, you're expected to go and to solve the problem. And for the most part, the fire department is really good at doing that. It doesn't matter if an entire factory has exploded or there's a very simple car wreck, they're going to be able to solve the problem once they get there. How are you going to know if this job is not for you? Well, let me start with saying you are going to see people in very bad conditions. You're going to go to car wrecks where sometimes a person's finger is broken. Sometimes they have a little bit of a rash on their collarbone from the seatbelt. Other times these people are just straight dead. You're taking dead bodies out of the water, out of a car, out of a building. You're around the dead quite frequently, and if they're not dead, you're going to find that people have their faces busted open, there's blood everywhere. Very traumatic thing to see, and if you can't handle that, this is not a job for you. And it's not just adults. You have to deal with dead children and dead babies. So people do develop a type of PTSD from this. They go into depression, they start having alcohol abuse problems. So if you think that you might lean that way, just skip this career completely. And it's the same thing with just EMS. If you're only doing the EMS side of things, it's still, you're dealing with people on their worst days from car wrecks. Dead babies, dead old people, dead young people, a dead person that's the same age as you. That really can mess with people mentally. So you have to approach it knowing that you're going to go into that. The lesser harsh side of that is you can't really be afraid of heights and do this job. Truck companies get on top of houses and use chainsaws to cut holes in roofs. Engine companies, they make entry with the fire hose, so it's not as much of being scared of heights, but you don't know what you're going to end up doing once you get into this career. You may spend 4 years on an engine company and just fight fire, only to be rotated into a truck company or a ladder company and spend 10 straight years there. It could be 10 weeks. It just depends on what the department's needs are. This job requires a lot of patience with people. So it's very, very common to get a call at 2 in the morning and someone who's elderly or someone who is obese has fallen and they can't get up. There you are, dead sleeping. The tones go off. You have to drive to where this person is. It's not really an emergency. You're just helping them up out of the floor. We call that a lift assist. And so you have to have patience and courtesy and respect towards everyone that you're giving care to or everyone that you're helping. If you are quick to get frustrated, if sleep is the most important thing in your life and you can't do with having to wake up in the middle of the night, this job's probably not for you. At my department with our call volume, sometimes we will go the entire 48 hours and get to sleep all night. We won't have a call in the middle of the night. And then sometimes you'll pick up a rhythm or a cycle, and there's no logic to it. It just happens to be that every single night between midnight and 5 a.m., you're having to go do something, whether it be a fire alarm, help a patient up out of the floor, or a very serious call like a 3-vehicle car wreck and somebody has half their body just completely crushed and broken. You have to be able to be alert, focused, and aware enough not only to perform operations on that call, to do the things you need to do, but to also just drive down the road very swiftly with your lights and your sirens, paying attention to traffic. So if you wake up in the middle of the night and you're groggy and you cannot function, this may not be the job for you unless you can learn to adapt and overcome that. There have been times where I have come home from work, and at work I got maybe 2 hours of sleep. And that, while that does feel miserable, remember, you have 3, 2, or 4 days, depending on your work schedule. For me, it's 4 days to recover from that. Let's talk about the education for this job. What do you need to get your foot in the door and to get started? Well, at the very minimum, you're going to have a high school diploma or your GED. You can have a fire science degree. There's one that is an Associates of Applied Science for Fire Science, and then there's a 4-year degree called Fire Chief. Firefighters are broken down into 2 levels, at least in my state. There's what's called a level 1 firefighter and a level 2 firefighter. To become a level 1 firefighter, you need 150 hours of training in these very specific categories. Level 1 is usually what you find in your volunteer departments in your rural areas. 400-hour certification is for level 2. Once you get those 400 hours, you're certified level 2 and you can be a career firefighter. Now, some departments will say we're only hiring people that already have their 400 hours. Some departments will say we will teach you and give you a year to get those 400 hours. And some departments will say, we have our own in-house academy. This is for your larger cities. A city of about 100,000 population or more city will usually offer an academy. If they don't have their own, there are regional academies that they may send you to for a 1 or 2 or 3 week training, but you are expected to get that 400 hours completed within a year. Once you are a career firefighter and you've been working, you're expected to get 100 hours of training every year, and that's part of your incentive pay. And I didn't talk about this in the pay scale thing earlier because not every department does this, but with incentive pay, you get $4,000 a year, and they give that to you in a check every month. It ends up being around 300 and some change, and that's for your training. It's just called incentive pay. The hardest certification to get for this job is the CPAT, and that's the CPAT, and that's the physical agility test that you have to get. And this was implemented around 2008, and what it did is it kept the mayor of a town or some city official from saying, hey, my cousin or my brother-in-law really wants a job at the fire department, why don't you give them one? And so that's all well and good if you can pass the test, but most people are not going to pass this test unless they specifically train for this test. This test is just slightly higher than the police officer POPS test. It's 3.5 minutes on a stair climber with a weighted vest, and then you're running through an obstacle course of sorts, doing various different things. There's lots of videos on that you can see. Once you do the basic stuff and get started, there's a whole list of all different kinds of certifications that you can get. Some departments are going to expect you to get them, some are not going to require them. Some of that being that you can be a fire marshal, which is now called inspector. You can get a technician certification for rope rescue, confined space rescue, swift water rescue, trench rescue. There's some international certifications called the IFSAC, so you can become certified internationally as firefighter level 1 and 2. Some academies that you go through, that's kind of their final, is that you have to complete the IFSAC firefighter 1 and 2 in order to complete their academy process. There's even certifications for being an instructor, which lets you teach other firefighters how to be firefighters. The list just goes on and on with that stuff. So now that I have said all of that stuff and I've rambled on for nearly 20 minutes now, let me tell you that this is the best job in the world. When you do it, it is meaningful. It means something. Working in an office, making phone calls, being a telemarketer, being a customer service rep, there's no shame in those jobs, but you're not really contributing positively to society. What your function is to make money for somebody. And in this job, you are impacting people, you're making a difference, you have things that will stick with you for the rest of your life that are going to make you feel good. And that's the best part of this job. That's about all I can think of to tell you about this job. If it's something that you're a fresh graduate out of high school, if you're 18 to 22 and you're thinking about getting into this, get into it now while you're young. I wish that I had started when I was 18. It's a great career. Please consider it. And thank you for watching my video. Please like and subscribe. At this point, we should be monetized. I've just recently hit 1,000 subs. Anything you say in the comments helps the video get more views. Appreciate it. Thank you.